Yeah.
Oh, you open the meeting?
You ready, Jane? Yeah. Okay.
Wait,
I'll get this off the
we're
counter.
taping this? I didn't know we were taping this.
Yeah.
We're gonna look.
Good evening. Today is February 11th, and it's 2014 at 5:30 p.m. This is meeting number 2014-03. This is a special meeting of the President and Board of Trustees. Please take the roll.
President Barry?
Here.
Trustee Olenichuk? Trustee Desmond? Trustee Carberry? Trustee Vorder?
I'm here.
Trustee Strite will not be here tonight. Trustee Quinlan? Well, we don't have a quorum, so
Okay.
we just can't vote on anything tonight. So we'll have
Okay.
the presentation, though.
Thank you.
Trustee Tim just showed up.
We do have
Oh.
Still
Okay,
need one
Tim
more.
Desmond?
Trustee Desmond. Okay. So this is item 2 on the agenda, the 95th Street Corridor Plan Review. I'd like to call Jody Mariano with Tesca and Associates of Evanston up, please. And Jody, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. We are very excited to hear your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Burry. Thank you all for coming this evening. Before I begin, I wanted to ask if everybody had the chance to at least download the report that was put on the website, the project website. I'm going to speak in general to the highlights of this report. It's a lengthy report, but I want to talk about the topics that are sort of highlighted here so that we can save some time for discussion and questions at the end. As Dr. Burry mentioned, I'm Jody Mariano. I am a landscape architect with Tesca Associates. We are the lead planning consultant on this assignment. A little bit of background as to how the village came to study the corridor. A couple years ago, the village was awarded a grant through the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which is also known as CMAP, to study the corridor. The purpose of the corridor had multiple purposes involved, but it was basically to improve the way that the corridor looks. It was to improve the multimodal transportation opportunities, so being able to access PACE, Metra, being able to walk on foot, get good bike access, improve linkages between community destinations, and then zoning support and design guidelines for the entire corridor. And so the zoning support and design guidelines, those things address the properties that abut the corridor. So we're not just looking at what happens within the right-of-way of the road, but we're also looking at what happens on the properties that abut the road, so that overall we have an overall enhancement of the corridor. Back in fall of 2012, Tesca put in a proposal. We competed against some other Chicagoland firms. We were selected for an interview, and then by holiday time, we were told that we were selected, and we were very pleased to be working with the village and with CMAP, and then we began in January of 2013. I am part of a larger team. Tonight, as I mentioned, Tesca is the project lead. We are the community planners. We're also urban designers and landscape architects. We have a team member who is Business Districts Incorporated. They do the development economic piece and the market analysis. We have an engineering firm on our team, and that is Gaywalt Hamilton, and they were responsible for the transportation planning and engineering. So between the three firms, we were able to look at the roadway from a transportation standpoint, a market standpoint, but also a design standpoint and community identity. You probably noticed in the report the graphics for the roadway are broken up into 1-mile segments. It's a pretty long corridor. It's 4 miles between Harlem Avenue to the west and Pulaski Road to the east. And so each of the graphics that are represented to describe the recommended improvements for the corridor are organized in these 1-mile segments that are shown here. So they're organized along Harlem Avenue, Ridgeland, then Ridgeland to Central, Central to Cicero, and Cicero to Pulaski. A little bit about our schedule. We began in January of 2013. We're aiming to complete by the end of this month. We began our public outreach in January of 2013. The public outreach process has been ongoing. We've got a final public meeting planned for the end of this month. And the outreach included a community survey. It included interviews, focus groups, workshops. We wanted to hear from the public in a range of different venues, both digital and in person. We did some data analysis at the beginning of 2013. We were able to acquire GIS information from the village. We put together our maps and data to be the basis upon which we prepared our design documents. And then the visioning began in May of 2013, and we started to prepare the plan with touch points along the way with the village to develop that plan from June of 2013 until, that should say February of 2014 today. We've worked very closely with the village staff, who've been wonderful and very cooperative and very responsive. We've also, with the village's help, we have a steering committee that was put together, and you'll see the names here. Some I recognize in the room, and we're glad that everyone is here tonight. But the steering committee is made up of business owners, residents, architect, there's a chamber president, a past chamber president. I do want to call attention to the folks that are at the bottom of the list. We had the RTA represented, the Regional Transportation Authority. We had Pace Bus included. We had IDOT, we had Metra, and then we had CMAP, who is our funding agency. And I think it's critical to mention that IDOT was represented. As 95th Street is controlled by IDOT, their presence at the steering committee meeting all the steering committee meetings was very useful. A little bit about our public outreach. It sounds like you all have seen our public website. So we had a project website. We still have it. We have a Facebook page. It's been a place where people can input their comments, download information. We had over 1,000 responses for the community survey. And so we were thrilled to hear all of the responses. People were very engaged and very charged about improvements along this corridor. We held stakeholder interviews with property owners that are along the roadway and other stakeholders in the community. We held focus groups that were the outcome of the survey. And we also did a workshop at the high school. We had 4 steering committee meetings along the way. So as the plan was being developed and there were draft concepts, we would present them to the steering committee. They would give us input and feedback, and then we would go back and rework. We've had 2 public meetings so far. Our final one, as I mentioned, is at the end of the month. And then we also participated in the Fall on the Green event. So we were able to get input from face-to-face as well as online through digital media. With the steering committee, we put together a goals and objectives statement. The goal, I'll just read to explain simply, but partnering between the village community and the public agencies, the goal was to transform the 95th Street into a gateway to the community. Now, what is a gateway? It already functions as a gateway. It carries 40,000 plus cars a day. People are traveling in and they see the corridor as part of Oak Lawn, but the steering committee really wanted this to portray a very attractive, very welcoming, high-quality image of the municipality. And the other key piece of this goal is that it requires partnerships between the village and public agencies like IDOT, Metra, and PACE, and also the community stakeholders that are owning property along the corridor. The objectives are listed below that, but these are objectives that are in support of the goal. Supporting the existing businesses is critical. We heard that from the beginning, but we also want to make sure we're continuing to attract new businesses. Downtown Oak Lawn is on the corridor, and so supporting that is just the cultural center place of downtown was really important to the committee. Maintaining a friendly neighborhood atmosphere, so those neighborhoods that abut downtown, for instance, from the north and the south sides, making sure that that's still a friendly environment for them, and reinforcing PACE, Metra use as well as pedestrian use. One of the 1,000+ responses that we heard, pedestrian safety was really one of the key things that we heard from the community. And then to create a series of eye-catching experiences, it's very easy to just travel down 95th Street and sort of get your tunnel vision, but if there were opportunities to create engaging, attractive identity elements along the roadway, that was something the steering committee was interested in us pursuing. The way that the plan is organized, and I'll go through highlights of each, but we looked at transportation and transit. We look at Streetscape, which is a follow-up to the transportation piece. As part of our assignment, we looked at site development concepts, and those are properties that are controlled privately but still have a visual and functional impact on the corridor. So we looked at opportunities to improve select sites. And then design guidelines, land use, and zoning all sort of go hand in hand, but we identified some opportunities where the village could work with the development community and private property owners to improve things like parking lots, signs, facades as they abut the corridor. And then the following piece is the implementation strategy, which outlines a roadmap for the village to undertake to get some of these things done. So to begin with transportation, as we all know, it's a really well-traveled road. It's a wide road. It's a little bit of a barrier for pedestrians to cross. And on top of that all, there are some narrow sidewalks. So we know that we have a lot to compete with. We also know that we have to continue to move all that traffic on the road. So some of the goals that the transportation section outline is to develop a median plan. As you've probably noticed, there's a lot of raised concrete median, painted median along the roadway. IDOT is interested in a median because it helps separate the traffic. So in some spots on the road, you've probably noticed northbound and south, or eastbound and westbound traffic almost touch one another, but by creating a median in between, it separates them a little bit more and creates a safer atmosphere for the cars. From a village identity standpoint, it's a tremendous opportunity to incorporate things like signage, landscaping, public art into the median and make that sort of a key identity feature for the community. Updating the crossings so that there are better signals, making them safer to cross for pedestrians. Pace Bus is involved in a transportation project at the same time that we are. They're evaluating the 95th Street corridor beyond Oak Lawn, but it includes Oak Lawn, and then it continues to the west. But part of this program is a proposed arterial rapid transit system, which basically means updated buses, updated shelters, and more high technology elements in the plan. So we want to make sure that we're priming the corridor for that sort of thing. Pace Route 895 currently terminates at Chicago Ridge Mall and then goes up to I-294, and so working with PACE to explore whether it's feasible to continue that route all the way to the town center to support the town center as a hub of activity was included. We heard a lot of response from the public, a desire to expand the Metro weekday service, and so that's included in the plan to have additional Metro service. And we know that it's going to depend on Metro's programming and budgeting to allow that sort of thing, but we have documented that this is something that the public really wants to endorse in the plan. The Metro Garage had some vacancies, and so the village has been in discussions with Metro to look at whether some spaces could be freed up for parking for the patrons of downtown. There are some approvals that would need to happen with the FTA, with Metro, but there may be some opportunities, we believe, to increase parking for the business patrons within the Metro Garage. On-street parking, for those on the steering committee here tonight know that this was a very hot topic throughout the course of the project. On-street parking serves the businesses. I understand that in years past, some on-street parking had been removed previously in favor of a widened roadway, but we, as a steering committee, put forth a plan that supports on-street parking where it exists today. And it is defined by things like curb bump outs or knuckles that you've probably seen along 95th Street in Beverly to our east. There is only one spot where the on-street parking would not remain, and that is in front of the AT&T switching station over at Brant, and that helps us with the proposed signalized intersection at Brant Street. But otherwise, where on-street parking exists today, the steering committee has proposed as part of this plan that it shall remain. And then bike use. I understand, we all understand that the village has a draft bike plan and that biking is important to the village. We took that bike plan, we reviewed it against some of the other biking initiatives that are happening on the east side towards Chicago, on the west side towards Bridgeview, and we filled in the gaps with proposed bike routes as part of this corridor study. So the graphics that are shown in the report identify the recommendations that I've just gone through. The proposed traffic signal on the right-hand side, those are shown that is shown at Brant Street. Back on the left side, we've identified where the median would occur. If it's 5 feet or wider, it could be treated with landscaping. If it's less than 5 feet, it could be treated with colored and textured pavement. And then we've identified where painted medians would occur, where on-street parking would remain, where on-street parking would be removed, such as in front of that AT&T switching station. And then we found that as we went through with our engineers, there's a lot of excess pavement, which I'm sure everyone's already noticed, that the roadway has some spots where it feels like the travel lanes grow to, you know, a travel lane and a half almost. And so we've proposed reconfiguring the section so that we can get a wider sidewalk. So we've identified places where we can get wider sidewalks. There is only one proposed roadway extension shown on the plan, and that's near Centennial Park to serve the neighborhood. I do want to mention that with the medians, the raised medians serve that function of separating eastbound and westbound traffic, as I mentioned, but they also control traffic that wants to move either eastbound or westbound on 95th Street. What we heard from the community was a desire not to make a left turn onto 95th. It's just too tough when we're not at a signalized intersection. So these medians are located strategically to encourage right in, right out only at some select intersections. So the left turn would be restricted because that median would be in the middle of 95th Street. The proposed road end closure only occurs one time near that ice house, the little ice dispenser house, which is near the East Shore Drive, I believe. Yeah, and that would stay, but it's proposed as part of the bike plan to create some green space as a visual entry into that greenway. These are how those improvements get applied throughout the corridor. But I'm not going to go through the entire, but you can see, you know, here we are at Harlem Avenue, Oak Park Avenue, there's the intersection here, and the green shows the median, which transitions into a paved median throughout. But where the green median comes through, you can see these yellow triangles. Those represent proposed road right in, right out only access. And to back into the locations for those, our engineers and we looked at locations where there was already a secondary access. So where there was already an alleyway or another secondary mode to get into that neighborhood, we felt that that was an appropriate location for a right in, right out. I'm going to go through these to get to the sections. So you can see these red section lines identify the several sections that are shown throughout the report. I just wanted to hit on some of the major topics, the major road typologies that are proposed in this report. Section A, this is the landscaped median. So this is when you're driving eastbound on 95th and you've just come off of the highway, for instance, or the tollway. The raised landscape median, or the raised concrete median would be replaced with landscaping. This is the kind of improvement that could happen basically tomorrow if approvals are in, but it doesn't require any changes to the roadway, but additional landscaping on the sides to present a nice gateway treatment into the village, and also landscaping in the median. And by the way, you know, we as a steering committee talked about this becoming sort of an avenue of the arts, that as you came in, this landscape median is so wide. It's, I think, about 16 feet here. And so with the IDOT required setbacks, with the right size sculpture, we believe that this could be a tremendous opportunity for you know, a pattern of sculptures along the way, so that as you drive in, you know, no other community has something like that. But we think that there might be an opportunity for that here. Another typology is where we have on-street parking. And so you can see the plan view drawing up at the top. These are the on-street parking spaces. Today, the curb just kind of continues all the way through, and then it turns into the side street. And what we're proposing is that there's a bump out that defines that parking so that people know that this is a space reserved for parking. It also provides an opportunity for landscaping in a little bit of green on the corridor. This is also an example where by modifying the width of the median, we're able to get a couple more feet for the walkway. Some of these walkways get as narrow as 6 feet, but in this location, we believe we can get up to 9. Another section, landscape median with sidewalks. This is very similar to what we just discussed, but this is a section taken near the metro station. Here, the landscape median, it's not a landscape median. The median that's out there painted today is fairly wide. It's about 16 feet. So we're able to shrink the median down to 12 feet, still get a nice, generously landscaped median, but then give some of that extra space over to the walkway on either side. And then an example of an intersection crossing where there's a signalized intersection. So this diamond shape represents a signal. This also comes directly from IDOT, but IDOT would like to see wherever there's a left turn lane that there's a very narrow median to separate the traffic. The nice thing about medians like this is that when they're at an intersection, the crosswalk can continue all the way, give a person a place to land that's on a median, it would be paved at this point, and then continue along. So it's reinforcing a pedestrian safe crossing from one side to the other. From a bike plan perspective, we've identified on-street versus off-street facilities. There are already some great things happening in the village with the on-street biking along 93rd Street. IDOT has some proposed lanes as part of their 2020 cycling plan to the east. And we've identified some other opportunities to promote biking in the village. So these are examples of, whoopsies, examples of on-street parking is down at the, or on-street biking on the bottom left. That would be otherwise called a sharrow, which is a painted bike lane on the street. Now, just want to point out, according to Illinois state law, bikes are permitted on all roads. And what this does is this just alerts motorists to say that this is a designated bike route and that they can watch out for bikers. On the bottom right, that's similar to what we already have on 93rd Street. And then the off-street trail up on the top. This occurs really at the Stony Island or the Stony Creek area and also on Ridgeland Avenue. As part of a Ridgeland Avenue corridor plan that our firm is involved with, a 10-foot wide multi-use trail is proposed along the length of Ridgeland. So this is a map which identifies where the bike lanes are. Primarily, we heard from the community and from staff and even our team agrees that biking on 95th Street is not an appropriate option for us. And so what we've proposed is that a safer place for bikes to travel is along the north of 95th on 91st. We already have 93rd, so that's taken care of. And also on the south, 99th. So we have this major east-west along 99th, along 91st. We've got some along 93rd. And then at key places where the roadways intersect 95th with a signalized intersection, we've got a north-south route identified. And so that, will get folks into the town center and around the town center without having to travel on 95th Street itself. The streetscape is really a follow-up to what was identified in the transportation section. But again, it's to promote downtown and to promote the corridor is a really attractive, welcoming corridor for the village. Reinforcing the gateway treatments, we talked about the medians already. Something that the public got very excited about, and so did our steering committee, was this treatment of the Museum Drive extension. And the village is already working with their consulting engineers on improving the area behind the museum, the alleyway area, and reconfiguring the parking. We believe that it was also an opportunity to promote a really cool, dynamic, compelling public place, that it could be a place where people could come and sit in an outdoor cafe or go to a really nice plaza, or there might be some small musical performances. But we thought that in addition to just parking and traffic, there might be some opportunities to also make this a very attractive, compelling place. So I'll show you a little bit more about the Museum Drive in a minute. Wayfinding signage is something that's a relatively low cost but high reward program that the village can take on. We've got some examples of that. And then we talked about the medians, widening the sidewalks we talked about, the bikes we talked about also, and same thing with the updated crosswalks. The other amenities like lighting and planter pots are all go hand in hand with streetscape, with things that can be improved. By the way, of the many responses we got from the community survey, the other thing that we heard the most was a desire to relocate some of the large planter pots away from the intersections on 95th Street. So, by virtue of this process, that's one of those things that doesn't cost a lot of money to modify, and the village can start to make progress with the corridor plan. Updating the paving to meet the current standards for ADA. And then adopting a sustainable and coordinated street furnishings program. The village has already demonstrated a huge commitment to sustainability by virtue of the green team and some of the LED lighting projects that's happening on the outside of the corridor. And so we thought that this is an opportunity to, again, adopt some of those treatments into the corridor plan. Village already has great signage on the bridge.